All right, and with that, let's get started. So, we are all here this evening to find out what happens when our children turn 18. So, many of you joining us this evening have seniors, some of you have juniors. For those seniors, congratulations to them and to your entire family on their graduation. So, some of your children will be graduating, some will be heading to college, some will be traveling close to home or far away. Some of your children will be starting a new job, and some of them may be moving away close to home in an apartment or in a dormitory. Most likely, it's a combination of many of those things. But no matter what direction our children are heading in, there is one thing that we all have in common and we share, and that is that when our children turn 18, they are now considered legal adults. And with that designation comes some important changes for them, for you, and for your family as a whole. And we're going to talk about those changes this evening. So this chart demonstrates some of the things that change when your children become a legal adult at the age of 18. Before 18, you could access your child's medical records. So if you had a question about your child's vaccination records, for example, you could call up to the doctor's office and ask for that information, and the doctor would be able to give you that information, and you can see if all the vaccines were up to date. After 18, that right changes. Before 18, you could make decisions about the course of your child's medical treatment. So if your child was running and slipped and got hurt, you could, along with the doctor, decide what the course of their medical treatment was going to be for that injury on your child's behalf. And after 18, that right changes. Before 18, you could speak to your child's doctor. So if your child wasn't feeling well, you could call up to the doctor's office and speak with the doctor or the nurse. You could relay your child's symptoms, and then you could decide on a course of treatment, whether it's going to be over-the-counter drugs or if your child needs to go in for an examination. And after 18, that right changes. Before 18, you could help your child with finances. So if your child had their own bank account and they got a statement and they were confused about that statement, you could call the bank on their behalf and try to sort things out. And after 18, that right changes. Before 18, you could access your child's educational records. This is always a tricky one for parents. And after 18, that right changes. And we're going to talk about that as well this evening. So, what is a parent to do? There are three essential documents. They are known as healthcare and financial powers that should be put in place for your children once they turn 18 and they are considered legal adults. We're going to talk about all of those three documents. We're also going to talk about FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. And FERPA governs your right as a parent to access your child's student records. And then when we've done this presentation in the past and we've brought it to various communities, we always have some common concerns that are raised. So we wanted to bring those to you proactively this evening. So Alan is going to talk about wills and trusts and access to digital assets. And then I'm going to have a discussion about dorm, apartment, and global insurance and health and safety apps. But we're going to start out with those three essential documents regarding healthcare and financial access. Those three documents are a healthcare power of attorney, a HIPAA authorization, and a power of attorney for property. And we're going to take each of these documents one at a time. We're going to start out with that healthcare power of attorney. So a parent cannot make medical decisions on behalf of their adult child, even in an emergency, unless proper authorization has been put in place. And that proper authorization is known as the healthcare power of attorney. The healthcare power of attorney gives parents or a designated individual the authority to make medical decisions on an adult child's behalf. So when we do these documents for our young adults, often they ask us, well, we don't want to sign anything that's going to give away any of our own rights. None of these documents that are going to be put in place supersede or waive the young adult's ability to make their own decisions. But this type of authorization, especially through this healthcare power of attorney, is especially important in the event that your adult child is unable, for some reason, to make his or her own medical decision. What would happen if you do not have this document in place? You could have to go to court to get a guardianship in order to make medical decisions on behalf of your child. It is expensive, it is aggravating, and you want to be able to make decisions immediately in the time of crisis. So, this healthcare power of attorney, putting it in place is very important. Should your child not be able to make their own medical decisions, they can designate whomever they want to step in and make those decisions for them. So I had a friend who their child was going to a large university. It was her eldest, and she was very nervous about her child acclimating to the university. So she recommended to her child that she consider joining some kind of recreational group. And she thought that was a great idea. And she joined a soccer team. And she was having a great time. She was getting used to the school. She was meeting her teammates. The end of practice, one evening, she collided with another one of her teammates and she was hurt very badly. So she immediately went to University Health Services. This is her first time away from home. She's with doctors that she doesn't really know, she's never met before. She's in a lot of pain. She can't appreciate what is happening to her. And she really needs a parent to step in and make medical decisions for her. So fortunately, my friend had these documents in place. When we do these documents for our young adults, we always do electronic copies because electronic copies are just as good as an original. And we always tell our clients to make sure that they can have easy access to those electronic copies because guaranteed, if they need them, they're going to want to access them immediately and send these documents to where they need to get to. She had the document available electronically, sent the healthcare power of attorney to University Health Services, and immediately was able to make medical decisions on behalf of her child. So these documents are very important. Hopefully you never need them, but if you do, you want to have them at your fingertips to be able to send. So HIPAA is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, and you're all familiar with HIPAA. Every time you go to the doctor's office, you fill out a HIPAA authorization. When your children become legal adults, they will do the same thing once they turn 18. And that HIPAA authorization allows healthcare providers to release and share medical information with designated people. It's not a decision-making document. Powers of attorney or decision-making documents, power of attorney for healthcare, decision-making document when your children can't make their own medical decisions. HIPAA is all about getting medical information. So this allows doctors to speak about a student or an adult child's medical condition with whomever is designated by that adult child on the authorization. And there can be as many people as that adult child wants to list on the authorization, but if they are not listed on their HIPAA form, they're not going to get information about what is happening with them medically. So HIPAA becomes crucial if your adult child is admitted to a medical facility and you need to get information about their condition, especially if they can't speak with you directly or they cannot fully relay medical information to you. So sometimes we get the question, why do we need a general HIPAA authorization if every time my child goes to a doctor's office, they're going to fill out a HIPAA form? Well, what happens if your child is at a facility, at a hospital they've never been in before, and at the time they enter, they are unable to fill out the information required of that particular hospital or facility, and they can't reach you for some reason. So again, at a time of crisis, your primary concern is to ensure your child's taken care of, and you do not want potential additional burden of court proceedings or any kind of associated legal costs. So throughout tonight's presentation, I will have a couple of examples about my children. Alan has no examples about his children.
Because they are perfect.
But I do have real life examples that make it especially easy for me to do these presentations because I know how important these documents are, and Alan and I know how important these documents are. The worst thing is if somebody walks in the door or needs our assistance when they don't have these documents in place. It's not a situation that you want to be in. So I had my documents in place, and my oldest son went to college, and I actually sent the documents with him, and he knew about them and he took them to school. I don't know if the same thing will happen with your children, but with both of my children, when they got sick, it was very difficult for me to convince them that they should go get seen by University Health Services because there was always something going on. There was a class they had to get to, there was a meeting or some reason. So my son had gotten sick and I urged him to go, and he said that there was no convenient time slots, and he waited the week, and at the end of the week, he was so ill that I got a phone call from him that he was going to the emergency room. But don't worry, because even though he had his phone and he only had one battery left, he was with his friend who was going to keep me informed about what was going on. So I was very nervous. I waited. I didn't hear anything from him. Finally, his friend called me and said, I can't get any information because I'm not authorized to receive any medical information. So I quickly called the nurses station, and the nurse said, I can't even tell you if your son was admitted until I have the proper documentation in place. So I had these documents electronically. I quickly sent off the HIPAA. I called back. The nurse said, okay, now I can tell you what's going on. So sorry, I couldn't before. So I can tell you firsthand how important these documents are. And again, hopefully you never need to use them. But if you do, it's very important you have them in place. By the way, my son did not bring his copies that he brought with him to school. He couldn't even remember that he had them with him. So there's no need for you to send these with your children. Just make sure you have electronic documents, and they do too.
Thanks, Karen. So Karen talked a little bit about the healthcare power of attorney and the HIPAA authorization form. Those are medical directives. We're now going to turn our attention for a few minutes to the power of attorney for property. So this is a financial power of attorney. These forms that we were talking about this evening, the power of attorney for healthcare that Karen reviewed, and the power of attorney for property that I'm going to go over with you in a moment, these are statutory forms. So the Illinois legislature has created these forms. They are available online, so you could execute these yourself with your adult child. However, we will caution you that the forms do require special witnessing and notary requirements, so you want to be careful that you're following those properly so they're done correctly. But the forms are available online. Now, as a law firm, we do tweak them a little bit, and we add some additional powers to make them a little bit more relevant for our young adults. So that's something that we do to kind of value add to the existing forms. But we wanted to point out that the forms are available online. Now let's get back to this power of attorney for property. So again, this is a financial power of attorney. So when you have your young adults sign this form, they are appointing an agent to make financial decisions for them if they cannot make them themselves. So if they can make their own financial decisions, of course they can do that. None of the forms that we're recommending this evening for your young adult to sign are going to constitute a waiver of any of their rights. Just because somebody has power of attorney over me does not mean I have given up my own decision-making, and it does not allow them to override my own decision-making. I always maintain that type of control, but the reason why these documents become so essential is because if your young adult is ever in a position where they cannot make their own decisions, then again, having these forms in place is going to avoid the need to petition the court to become their legal guardian so you have the ability to make some of these decisions. So again, the power of attorney for property is a financial power of attorney. It allows you, the parents, if you're named as the agents, to manage your adult child's finances. It becomes critical if they are injured or ill, or unable temporarily or permanently to make their own decisions. This would cover things like access to a bank account or to a brokerage account, or dealing with the Department of Motor Vehicles, or handling any type of financial matter that you can think of. So again, this having these forms in place, if this type of situation were to arise, is going to prevent you from having to resort to going to court and petitioning for guardianship, which is going to be very expensive. It's time consuming. It's public. All of this can be privately handled by having these documents in place. Again, some of the things that the power of attorney can handle is going to be like maybe responding to a letter from the IRS, or handling some sort of tax issue, dealing with any type of banking or financial institution, and again, dealing with the Department of Motor Vehicles, or things that are similar to that. So sometimes people say, well, I have a bank account with my adult child, and, I'm on there as a joint owner. So don't I have the right to do some of these things without the power of attorney? And of course, the answer is going to be yes. But let's say that, when your young adult leaves home, maybe they're going to college, or maybe they're starting a job, or they're traveling. If they wind up opening something in their own name, I know that, my kids, as part of their feeling of independence when they turned 18, was they wanted to open up their own, my son wanted to open up his own investment account, and he went online and opened something up, and, that's only in his name. My wife and I have nothing to do with that account. So if something were to happen and we needed to access that for him, the power of attorney that he executed, giving us the authority to assist him, is going to be very, very important. So, you can't have too many tools in your tool chest when we're talking about our children. We want to make sure that we have the ability to do whatever is going to be necessary in order to help them. The other thing that we do, and this is not included in the statutory form for the power of attorney for property, is we add an additional power among a couple of others as well, but especially this one, we like to point out the ability to handle digital assets, or have access to things that are online, because, most things are done online, especially by our children. They're going to do everything online just because the technology is available to them. So we always put in a special provision in the power of attorney for property that allows the agent to access these accounts. Now, we also always say that this should probably be plan B, because is it going to be easier for you as parents to log into their account online if you know the login and the password? And of course, the answer to that question is yes. So you may want to consider, as a family, having some sort of password emergency system. Maybe it doesn't matter too much for social media accounts or things like that, but, for banking and financial matters and other important things, you may want to, have your adult child share that information with you so you have it. However, if that failed or it didn't exist, then you'd have the power of attorney for property to fall back on. And with these extra provisions of allowing access to digital assets, then hopefully you would be able to get that password and do what you need to do. So again, we can't be too careful with this. We want to put in, pretty much everything that we can think of, so we can get access to these things if we're going to need to do that. The other question we get is like, well, that's great, but, my son or my daughter they're going to go to school in Pennsylvania or Texas or California or Florida or New Jersey. Wouldn't it make more sense for them to get these forms, created there? And certainly there would be nothing wrong with that. That's definitely an option that you have. However, a couple of reasons would, also allow it to be to occur in Illinois. Number one is when they go off to school, they're not really changing their residency yet. I mean, they're still going to be Illinois residents. So having Illinois forms tends to make sense. In addition, as long as the forms are properly executed, they're witnessed, they're notarized, anything that would be required, they're going to be valid in all 50 states. So all states are going to recognize these as being valid powers of attorney. So having them done in Illinois before your child gets super busy at school and maybe doesn't feel like doing this anymore is probably a good idea. So if you're lucky enough to have a child who is going to turn 18, because they do have to be 18 before they can do any of this, before they leave for school, then that's a good idea to maybe get it done beforehand. If they turn 18 afterwards, my son was an August birthday and he didn't have the opportunity to get it done before he left for school. That's okay. When they come back for their, break or, Columbus Day weekend, hopefully, or Labor Day weekend or whatever, or definitely Thanksgiving or the Christmas holiday. That's a great time to maybe address this issue. So having it done in Illinois, even if your adult child is going to wind up going to school somewhere else, is completely acceptable. The other thing that people ask is, when do these forms expire? I mean, what happens when my child graduates from college or, turns 25 or whatever age? Do these documents expire at some point in time? And the answer to that question is no. They have the right to revoke them at any time. So if they want to make changes, they can do that, or they want to revoke the forms, they certainly have the right to do that whenever they want. However, they don't expire. And we typically tell the young adults that, these documents will be good while you're at school. They'll be good after you graduate. A good way to revoke this one would be to do a new one. And a normal time to do a new one would be when they have a major life change, significant other, or they get married and they want to, add their spouse to the form, or maybe replace mom and dad with their spouse. Although they never need to do that. I think they can keep mom and dad on there forever. But the forms don't expire. They can remain in effect for as long as they want.
So putting these forms in place, these powers of attorney and healthcare directives give you peace of mind, right? So they allow you to make immediate decisions and give you access to critical information should crisis occur, so you can just focus on the situation at hand. They're relatively easy to put in place. They really are. They should be among the top of everyone's list once your child is 18 and is considered a legal adult. And you should make sure that you have documents that are easily accessible to you.
We got a question from an anonymous attendee. I didn't know you could be anonymous, but kudos to you. Will this slide deck be shared with us? And the answer would be yes. We're going to send a PDF over to Lainey, and then she can distribute that hopefully for us. We do have, I think for the people that are not in the room, we do have your email addresses, but we don't want to send you anything without your permission. So maybe we'll do that. So thank you.
Yep. Of course, yeah.
I'll just mark those that those are answered. Okay, sorry, technology. There we go. Okay.
All right. So in addition to limitations to medical and financial access once your children turn 18 and are now legal adults, there is also limitations to your ability to access their educational records. So FERPA is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, and that is what governs a parent's access to their children's student records. So there's a lot of misinterpretation about FERPA. We're going to talk about that a little bit, but first we're going to show you a chart. And this chart demonstrates before 18 and after your children become legal adults, the right to access your child's student records. So before 18, you could view your child's educational records. And after 18, that right changes without the proper authorization in place. Before 18, you could request a correction to your child's educational records. And after your child becomes a legal adult at 18, that right changes. Before 18, you could decide who can see your child's educational records, and after 18, that right changes without the proper authorization in place. And before 18, you could get photocopies of your child's educational records. And after 18, that right changes without the proper authorization in place. So there's a common theme here. That common theme is proper authorization, and that is written consent. And FERPA does have a specific written consent form. The misinterpretation or the misunderstanding of FERPA is that some students believe that it only applies to their educational records in terms of their grades. It is not just grades, it is their entire educational record. So if your child is at college, university, and they are having some difficulty acclimating and they confide in an administrator or a teacher, and that teacher or administrator has some concerns about what they've been told and they want to reach out to you, they are unable to do that, to connect with you, unless the FERPA authorization is in place. It is an extremely important document. There have been some very tragic stories for students who do not have these in place. These are recorded in your students' records at the registrar's office. So the registrar maintains these FERPA authorizations. Some colleges have their own FERPA forms. A lot of times when you're registering online, your young adult will check off and won't even realize that they checked off a box that says that they're agreeing to FERPA. We always do backup FERPA authorizations for all of our young adults because the documents are too important not to make sure that they are in place.
Let's check. I don't know if these are the two old, let's see. Oh, we've already answered these. Oh, I can mark them as done. Sorry. Okay, there we go.
Super.
Sorry, guys. Technical issues. All right.
All right, so we want to dive into some of these common concerns that have been raised in the past when we have brought this presentation to the community. Alan's going to discuss wills and trusts and access to digital assets, and I'll follow up with a brief discussion about dorm, apartment, and global insurance, where I have an example from my other child, and health and safety apps.
Thanks, Karen. So wills and trusts, we're not going to have a whole huge discussion on this, but we get the question, okay, you're talking about powers of attorney and healthcare directives for my adult child. What about, do they also need a will or a trust or something like that? So, the financial and healthcare powers of attorney are one essential element of estate planning. Wills and trusts are another, but let's explore and answer this question as to whether or not your adult child might need something like this. And to start off, let's just briefly define what a will is and what a trust is. And the first way I'm going to do that is point out that the powers of attorney and the healthcare directives that we talked about earlier, those documents are only effective during lifetime. So when somebody passes away, their power of attorney is no longer effective. A will is the exact opposite. It has no effect during one's lifetime and only becomes effective after somebody passes away. And most of us know what a will is. We, may have, if we haven't had a real life run-in with a will or administering one or being exposed to one, we probably have seen one in TV or in a movie, watching Dynasty or something like that, where they do a reading of the will. That's not really a thing. You don't have to read a will like that in such dramatic fashion, but it makes for good movie and television. But a will is a document that's going to state where you want your assets to be distributed to at the time of your death. So, I am married, so I might have a will that says, I leave everything to my spouse if she survives me, otherwise in equal shares to my children. And then my wife might have a will that says she's leaving everything to me if I survive her, otherwise again in equal shares to our children. So that might be a simple estate plan that a married couple might put together. And what a will does is it directs the court as to who you want your assets to go to after you pass away. A will, remember, is only effective after death. Powers of attorney, only effective during lifetime. A trust, however, is effective immediately upon signing. So it's a document that's going to be effective during lifetime, and it's going to be effective after death as well. So it's a little bit like a super document. And like powers of attorney and like a will, it handles the administration or disposition of property during life and what happens after death. We do have a question, so let's take a quick look. For the academic records, does that still apply to someone in high school and over the age of 18?
It does, but the high schools have the information they need in terms of that consent. It's all governed by whether that person is claimed as a dependent on your taxes. So you don't need to be concerned while your child is in high school. But obviously, these colleges don't have access to that information. So they're going to want to see a FERPA in order to release that information.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Just mark that as done. There we go. All right. So let's go back to our wills and trusts for a moment. So you've got a will, you've got a trust. Now that's all very interesting, I'm sure, but the question is, does my adult child need either one of these documents? And of course, the answer is going to be, it depends, right? Does your child have their own amount of significant wealth? I mean, do they have their own assets? Do they have things that need to be administered if they pass away? If the answer is no, if they're a typical young adult who's graduating from high school and maybe has a small savings account or something like that, or an account with you, then they probably don't need a will. If they have their own wealth, maybe they inherited money, or maybe they were trading securities or Bitcoin in the middle of the night during high school, and they have their own money, well, then maybe they do need an estate plan. So a large part of this will depend on the degree of the assets that they have. But there's also, substitutes for estate planning that might apply to them. So they might have an account that's payable on death. So if they have an account in their own name, they might have you or your spouse or their other parent listed as the beneficiary of that account. It could be a joint account, right? So if I have a joint account with somebody and I pass away, that other person automatically becomes the owner of that account at my death. Also, you have beneficiary designation. So if somebody has a life insurance policy or a retirement plan and they've named beneficiaries, those assets don't pass through a will or a trust. They pass pursuant to the beneficiary designation. So that's a contract that one has with the insurance company or the custodian of the retirement plan, that when somebody passes away, this money is going to be paid to this person or to these people. So these different things a young adult could have on some of the assets that they own, that's going to maybe take care of the issue, so they won't have to be concerned about creating a will or a trust. We have a question: can you use a trust for someone other than a parent to use in the event that something happened to? I'm sorry, let me just read this one more time.
Decision making.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, yes, you don't have to name parents, by the way, in any of the documents that we're talking about. I mean, generally, the young adult is going to name a parent or both parents as the agents under the powers of attorney. If they're doing a will or a trust, they may name the parent as a beneficiary or an executor or a trustee, but you don't have to do that. They could name whomever they wish. It doesn't have to be parents. So if that was the essence of the question, I hope that answered. If not, maybe try again with rephrasing, or you could always email us after the fact. I apologize for maybe not getting that correct. So we'll move on, but we'll wait and see if there's an update to that question. So the other thing you want to be careful about is digital assets. We already talked about this with the power of attorney issue. Again, if you're creating a will or a trust, you want to give the person that you're putting in charge in those documents access to digital assets as well. We just find this to be a very important addition to all of the legal documents.
So, I want to take a few moments and talk about insurance. So, things happen, and you might want to look into insuring yourself with dorm, apartment, rental insurance, or global insurance for your children. Global insurance, obviously, if they're going to be traveling. Okay. And renter's insurance if your children are going to be living in a dorm or an apartment when they are heading off. So, we'll just make sure we have all the questions done. Okay.
Thank you.
So, standalone policies are surprisingly relatively inexpensive, but often your homeowners also have this type of coverage and protection. So the best thing to do really is to look into your homeowners, see what the deductible might be, and also to contrast that to some of these standalone policies and see which one is going to make more sense. So just something to look into for your family. So my daughter went to school in the middle of Pennsylvania, very cold. I told both of my children before they went to school, do not leave your computers unattended because their whole world obviously is on their computers. They're getting their class schedules, they're doing papers on there. I mean, it's their world, obviously. So my children both knew that going off. And my daughter had a favorite place in the library she liked to go to. So on one wintry, very cold afternoon, she bundled up, she put her coat, her hat on, her gloves on, she put her backpack with her computer, and she went to the library. Unlike when I went to college, I know I'm obviously dating myself, but we didn't have Grubhub that would deliver food. And she was hungry and she ordered up and she remembered that she should not leave her computer alone. So she grabbed her computer, she ran downstairs to the library, she got her food. When she came back up, she had no coat. So somebody had stolen her coat. She was very upset, number one, because somebody had stolen her coat, and number two, that it was the middle of winter and it was cold, and she was very upset, obviously. The only thing she needed to do was to file a police report to show exactly what had happened. We had had insurance for her. We had dorm insurance. The dorm insurance actually covered theft, even in the library. And within 1 week, she got a replacement coat. Her exact coat was replaced. So for us, that insurance paid off itself and then some for that occurrence. So different policies cover different things. It could be theft, it could be damage, if somebody drops their computer, their phone. So just something to look into, to put on your list, to see if getting some kind of insurance would be something that would be good for your family. The other thing we wanted to bring you tonight is this medical ID app. So this is something that you have at the tip of your finger. So not just for your young adults, but for everybody in your family who has a phone. The medical ID app is a square white box with a red heart in it. This can be found on iPhones on your home screen. If you have a different type of smartphone, you can download a similar health app. And the medical ID app allows first responders to bypass a lock screen, whether it's a numerical code or facial recognition, and get into the app to see what information is in there. It is especially important if your child or you or a member of your family has an allergy to a medication or might have an allergy to a particular food, might have a condition that would be helpful for a first responder to know about. So we don't endorse using the medical ID app or how much information to put in, but it's something that we wanted to make you aware of because it is a tool that's very easy to use. And if you have a situation where it would be helpful to have this information for your child or for any other member of your family, it's just something that we wanted to make you aware of. And then we get questions all the time about safety apps and what to download. So again, we don't endorse using any particular apps. And there are many out there. If you Google safety apps, there's going to be dozens and dozens that come up. The one thing that we do advise is that you vet any safety app before you put it on your phone. A good idea is maybe asking a trusted friend what they use for their students, or asking your young adults what their friends use. Ones that I used for my family were Follow My Uber, Follow My Walk, Life 360 is another good one. Find My Friends is another good one. So there's a lot out there. You just want to, again, make sure you vet any apps before you download them.
Just don't abuse the power like Karen's husband, who
It's true.
their daughter kicked him off of
It's true.
Find My Friends for
That is
abusing the power.
that is true. That
So
is
be
true.
careful about that. And then we just wanted to mention briefly too, so we know that you guys are in Chicago, of course, and we're in Lincolnshire, but planning remotely is allowed in Illinois. So when COVID came upon us, there was an executive order, and there's certain requirements that need to be met and certain formalities. But we do these projects remotely with many of our clients on Zoom. And that's a great way to kind of get this taken care of if it's not really easy to make it up to Lincolnshire. We also wanted to stress that now is the time to get these done. So when your child turns 18, we do get many of the young adults come in on their actual birthday because their parents set it up that way. And we can probably think of better ways to spend our 18th birthday, but we do make it as fun as humanly possible. And we have like a little gift, but at 18 or shortly thereafter, you should be addressing this with your adult child. You don't want to wait until it's too late, obviously, right? So if something were to happen, your child may not be in the condition or it may not have the ability to execute legal documents anymore. And at that point, it's going to be too late. So, you want to think about having this taken care of when everything is good, and hopefully you'll never need them. You put them in a drawer. We provide them electronically for our clients as well. So you'll have them electronically and you have them at your fingertips if you need them, but hopefully you never will. But just having the peace of mind of having it completed is going to go a long way. So very quickly, we do offer this service at our firm. We do charge a nominal fee of $300 per student. But the nice part about it is we go through the documents with your young adult. We explain everything. It takes about 45 minutes. We have an online portal to get started so they can enter information. We create the documents. We meet with them either in our office or online. We explain everything and they get it done. So it's a nice little service, and we take care of all the witnessing and the notary and all of that stuff, so you don't have to worry about it. And then we provide electronic copies, and you also provide you with the originals and all of that. So it's a great way to get this taken care of. As I mentioned earlier, you can do it, of course, on your own. Just be careful to make sure that you're following all of the rules in regards to signing the documents and making sure that the ones that need to be notarized or witnessed, that's happening properly. So, oh yeah, a couple of questions before we get to this last slide here. Can an 18-year-old child still be covered under parents' health insurance? We're not experts in that area, but I believe the answer would be that they could actually stay on your insurance until they're 26. I think it's 26, right?
That's when my kids got kicked off. Yes.
My kids haven't reached that yet. Kidding. Yes. So, yes, at 18, certainly. And if they're dependent upon you, certainly as well. So yes, you can cover them on your insurance. You can probably also, if they're going to school, some of the universities will have health plans available as well. And that could either supplement what you have on your own or replace what you have on your own if it's expensive to carry them on your insurance. So you want to shop that around and figure that out. Talk to your insurance person and figure out. But yes, they definitely can stay on your insurance until they're 26. So
that's a really good point. I don't think a lot of people know that sometimes the schools provide that health insurance option. You just have to look and see if those policies make sense, right?
And then we had a question, what was the fee per student? Again, that's $300. So it's a flat fee. We prepare the documents, we spend the time with your young adult, and certainly you're welcome to join in on those meetings as well. They are our client, though. You get to pay for it as a parent, but they're our client. So, but most of them will be happy to have their parents with them when this whole process is going when we're going through this with them, so the parents can understand, because you're the ones that'll be using the forms, not necessarily your kids, because they're going to be making their own decisions, and they don't need a power of attorney to make healthcare decisions for themselves. They're just going to do that. You're the one that might need these forms. So having you involved in the process is not required, but it's definitely recommended. So you guys will have a good background on what these documents do, how they work, and what choices your young adult is making as well. So.
And you will be copied on everything, and you will get those electronic copies as well as your young adult. So some of the most important gifts that you can do when your children turn 18 and become legal adults is to make sure that they have in place a power of attorney for healthcare, listing those who can make medical decisions on their behalf if they cannot make their own medical decisions, a HIPAA authorization, for example, who's allowed to call up a hospital and get information about what's going on. Power of attorney for property, if they needed help with financial affairs, listing who is authorized to help on their behalf. Make sure that a FERPA is in place, really important. A Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. Now, one of the other things we wanted to mention is if your child changes schools or goes to grad school, the FERPA form is per school. So if they're going to go to a new school, you would just do a new FERPA for that school. A will or trust if advisable. Look into insurance, see if it makes sense for your family, as well as looking into that medical ID and safety apps as well, and see what may work for your family. So we are here to answer any questions you have. Like Alan said, we're here if you want to send us questions later. We really are very passionate about this information, and we're always happy to answer any questions. We want to give a huge shout out to Lainey and the Friends of Jones for having us this evening. It's really
Thank you so much.
been an honor for us to be able to be here and to speak with you all about this very important information.
Thank you, Karen and Alan. I am not going to lie. I sent an email to our family text asking where are our documents electronically. And can somebody please create a Google Drive and make sure we have them in there? So I definitely got something out of this. I appreciate that.
Good. And we have copies too, so we could send them to you.
Yes. Thank you. I just want to make sure, does anybody in here have any questions? No, I am going to preface that I think if people do want this document, it is best if actually Karen and Alan email it out and email me a copy. As you can attest, if you were here earlier, I'm the least technologically able person to figure this out. So I would recommend that this does get shared out to everyone on their email. And then if you send it to me, I'll try to figure it out. But I am not a techie person at all.
No
so just to make sure that anybody who wants it can have it.
Sure.
If anybody has any other questions, now is the time.
And then we'll only use the email addresses for that purpose, and we're not going to send you any other solicitation. So the purpose of this was really to give information. If you are interested in having us help you, that's great, but certainly not required. And we're not going to send you any additional emails unless you want some information. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations to all the graduating seniors and all the parents. How exciting. So
thank you for taking part of your evening to join us. We appreciate it.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And then we're going to shut this down. We're going to take 2 minutes to reorganize here in the room, and then we'll get started with our meeting. Thank you. All
right. Have a great night, everybody.
bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.